Good morning. It's 8:38 a.m. on Sunday, August 30th, 2020. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. It's Sunday, which means I'm continuing my rewatch of The Legend of Korra with Season 2, Episode 10, A New Spiritual Age. I like this episode a lot, especially in particular just because of all of the cool spirit world stuff. Um, will say just briefly though that I'm like a little bit low energy this morning. I feel like I just didn't sleep well last night. So I'm kind of dragging a little bit. My apologies. It should not be indicated as taken as an indication of my lack of enthusiasm for the episode, which I did actually quite enjoy. But so we have, I think, the big selling point for this episode is just how cool and weird the spirit world is. I have to say, for the setting in which I have been running my Dungeons and Dragons campaign so many levels, uh, I wanted it to be inspired by a lot of like the Studio Ghibli movies and the spirit world in this, and just in terms of how spirits interact with humans and the material world in general. But boy, I tell you, I still nonetheless watch these and just feel like I didn't do it justice. It's still just so cool. All of the ways that the landscape just transforms around them, and the weirdness combined with the banal. It's very cool. So we left off last time with the realization that it would need to be Jinora to escort Korra into the spirit world in order, with the intent being to find the spirit portal from the inside of the spirit realm and close it from that side because they can't get to it in the material world. So we begin though with a little bit of Tenzin, Kaya, and Bumi watching over Korra and Jinora's bodies while they're in the spirit world. And we have a little bit of setup that's honestly really just meant, I think, to frame the rest of the story, especially with the payoff of the very end, with Tenzin just expressing concern about how he feels like because he was not able to go into the spirit world, his failing means that Jinora had to go do this dangerous thing. So he's just worried about that. But in the meantime, we also have him just, nervously saying, reminding first of all the audience that they won't have their bending in the spirit world, in case anyone didn't remember that that's how that works. But also, again, showing a little bit that, his perspective of like, without their bending, they'll be helpless. And Bumi's like, I'm right here. I don't have bending. I'm not helpless. So they're trying to reassure him, and it's not working very well. But, they're doing what they can because there's really not much they can do at this point. So once we get to the spirit world, first of all, again, I just want to say, like, it's amazing the cool imagery and weirdness of the spirit world is just so neat. We have the two almost immediately getting separated. And we have, so Jinora is kind of very at home there because she's always had this, been in touch with the spirits, but she is still young, and so she kind of wanders away following a butterfly, not realizing or not as aware as she needed to be that Korra is less accustomed to dealing with the spirits. And so we have Korra encounter some, I guess they look like big meerkats or weasels or something like that. And so it's interesting. I like how the meerkats are sort of antagonistic and unimpressed with Korra, which kind of reflects her energy a little bit. And, and that's a big theme of this episode is that Korra's own emotional dynamics are a challenge for her, and the spirit world reflects those back at her. And I think Korra has many good qualities, but we know that she tends to be hot-headed, stubborn, um, and get easily frustrated, and that's like all of those qualities really hurt her here. So she accidentally makes the one meerkat angry, and then is mad that they're not as impressed by her, and that they're giving her attitude, so she gives them attitude back, which just magnifies the whole thing. And again, like just with the imagery, the way that they sort of jump on her back, but then when they do, they turn into just these weird blobs that are like gumming her up. And then, of course, we have when Jonora comes to try to help, there's the whole bit where the meerkats just start running in a circle, but it creates this like whirlpool out of the meadow that was beneath them. And it's just like, it's cool stuff. And we see them, get flushed away by the water. There's a cool like river that goes out along in a 3D corkscrew. It's just some very cool imagery. But of course, we end up um, with Jinora and Korra separated. So we have essentially two plot lines for the two of them at this point. So if we follow Jinora first, she is separated from Korra, of course, and her first concern is, well, gotta find her. So we're looking for her. We're also looking to see where the spirit portal is, and it's very neat. A fun reference back to the previous show when she sees the library of Wan Shi Tong, which featured in, ironically, I think I remember them saying on the commentary that so this is season 2, episode 10, but also in the original show, the kid Aang visiting this library was in season 2, episode 10. So that's just kind of a fun coincidence. But so if we recall, if it's been a while since you saw it, what happened when Aang visited this library is when it was in the desert on the material plane, buried in the sand, and they were hoping to find information about some of Aang's visions and figuring out what to do with the Fire Lord, but also trying to track down Admiral Zhao, who was using the library to try to find his own sort of spiritual line of attack. Excuse me. But the promise that Aang made to Wan Shi Tong, this enormous owl spirit, was that he would not use any of the knowledge he learned for violent purposes. Only problem is he did kind of break that promise. So even though it's a little bit unclear why it's such a disproportionate response, because it would seem that Zhao brought in a bunch of firebenders and literally destroyed an entire wing of the library, all about the history of the Fire Nation. But for Aang, it's the anger is reserved for discovering that Sokka finds information and hopes to use it for an invasion plan. It's where they learn about Sozin's Comet and that whole deal. So this discovery, leads Wan Shi Tong to chase the kids out of the library, and then chooses to take the library to the spirit world instead, so that humans can't go in there anymore. So that's where we left it. So Jinora finds this library, and there's a little bit of like a reminder of like, oh, hey, I remember reading about this. Grandpa Aang came here. But she visits there and is briefly, initially told by Wan Shi Tong, humans not allowed, it's against the rules. She tells him about radio, and there's this interesting bit where, Wan Shi Tong says, oh, I know about radio. It has the tiny man in the box. And she explains that no, it's actually electromagnetic waves and everything. And there's kind of a fun bit where Wan Shi Tong says, I did not know this. Apparently, I've been given some bad information. And then he looks over to one of these sort of coyote spirits that slinks away guiltily. So that's kind of fun. But, eventually, let's see, what was it that she said that eventually, yeah, let's see, um, gosh, I'm suddenly blanking on yeah, so I guess when she reveals that she is a descendant of Aang, he lets her stay. But I think so yeah, this is why took a moment to just remind myself the sequence, because here's, like, I think in the moment, if you're not remembering what's going on, that plays as a very reasonable, oh, well, of course, yeah, it makes sense that she's, the Avatar is very important, so sure, descendant of the Avatar, that's a big deal. But here's what we can remember that helps make sense of what happens later. Wan Shi Tung's not an Avatar fan, because of course, last time he saw Aang, chased him out of the library, and declared that's when he declared that there would be no more humans allowed. So the fact that he allows her to stay, discovering that she's related to Aang, is probably in reality when he decides to keep her there so that he can go tell Unalaq. Because we see her studying, and what she learns is all about the harmonic convergence, and how if both spirit portals are open on the harmonic convergence, that will allow Vatu to escape his prison. So she learns that, and it's this critical importance, but then discovers that Wan Shi Tong has brought Unalaq. And I like that Wan Shi Tong essentially becomes kind of an antagonist, but not strictly not on the strict, like, human axis of good and evil, because he's just got different priorities. He's certainly opposed to what our human protagonists want, but kind of for his own reasons, and we could suspect that he's maybe a little bit, misled by Unalaq, because Jinora is like saying, well, don't you care that Unalaq is, trying to do all of this? And, Wan Shi Tong is saying, well, Unalaq has proven a friend of the spirits, and Aang was not. And that suggestion of, why he chooses his allies. And we could say, but Unalaq's planning to release this spirit of darkness who's going to destroy the world. And here's where we, again, have the amoral quality of Wan Shi Tong kick in, which is to say, not my problem. I just run the library. I collect all of this knowledge and stay here. And it's not, this expectation that just because he cares about knowledge, that somehow means that he cares about other things also, is not accurate. And I think makes the spirit world more interesting, that you have these complex spirit characters that have complex and nuanced desires and motivations. But in any event, Jinora is kidnapped now by Unalaq, which is disastrous, as we will see in the rest of the episode. In the meantime, we have Korra having a lot of trouble being scared by the spirit world and reverting to sort of a 4-year-old version of herself, and then only being guided out of this scary region of the spirit world by, apparently, the spirit of Iroh, Uncle Iroh from the original series. Now, I will just briefly comment on, it's a little bit like the tail end of the last show, with the original actor, Mako, having died and not able to voice the character. It does just, it's not quite right. But, there's only so much they can do, right? Like, they didn't want to have to give up that character. But so, in the meantime, though, we have first of all, this knowledge that Iroh apparently, when he knew he was old enough that he was going to die, instead of just doing whatever happens to humans in this setting when they normally die, he decides to project into the spirit world, kind of like Jinora was doing, but to just go ahead and abandon his body. And that's interesting. So he is essentially just a spirit now, having a tea party with all these other spirits and explaining to Korra about how the spirits reflect her feelings and emotions back at her. And so if she expects them to be dark and scary, they will be. But if she can hold on to the light and peace inside herself, then she can, have that reflect outward as well. But I think what frustrates me a little bit, because as much as I like seeing Iroh again, I'm not sure his advice holds ultimately. Like, it helps Korra at least get over the obstacle that she's currently facing, where everything is scary and she's regressed to 4 years old. But it doesn't really solve the larger problem, because, even though she is able to make some of the spirits friendlier again to her, as soon as she's there with Unalaq has Jinora prisoner, as a hostage. He's making the spirits dark again, and like, her having this peace and light, at least in the moment, doesn't help. Now, that's not to say it's, the end of the story. It's just kind of, it feels like a very rather quick reversal, So his advice, if you look for the peace in the light, you'll often find it. But if you look for the dark, it's all you'll ever see. I like it, even though it's kind of just like a platitude. But in any event, so he gives her this advice. She's able to now navigate. She helps return this very cute little baby dragon bird to the top of a mountain, where it becomes a great big one. Makes some scary sort of lion dog spirits into friendlier ones, and makes her way to where the spirit portals are. But this is where, she's confronting Vaatu, only to discover Unalaq's there. He has Jinora and basically says, I'm going to destroy her soul if you don't open the other spirit portal for me. And this is one of those moments that always comes up in stories like this, that you kind of can't help but, like, it's such a tricky ethical question, right? Because on the one hand, we of course are horrified at the idea that he would kill Jinora, and we don't want that to happen. But we're also talking about, like, you're doing the thing that's going to theoretically allow him to destroy the world. I suppose the emotional calculus is always that, like, well, I'll do what you want for now, hoping that I'll have another chance to turn it around. But, if she failed to do that, like, you're going to be able to look back and say, well, there was a moment there where, it's, I guess it's kind of a trolley problem situation, right? Anyway, Korra does eventually agree. So she opens the second spirit portal, which means that we're in big trouble now, because, unless she can close them again by the time the harmonic convergence comes, Vaatu's going to escape, and at least in theory, plunge the whole world into chaos and darkness. Not great. Not to mention the fact that Unalaq immediately goes back on his deal, and so now that he's got the portals open, he tries to kill Korra. Almost succeeds, pointing out that it's like, hey, you should have come through the actual portal, because then you'd be able to bend in here, like I can. Ha-ya! And does not release Jinora, and Korra only just barely manages to escape, only for us to return to our framing device. She wakes up there back with Tenzin and Bumi and Kaya. But Jinora doesn't wake up, because she's still Unalaq's prisoner. And it's bump, 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 cliffhanger. So, we'll talk next week about Night of 1,000 Stars. But in the meantime, I'll talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.